Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
If you're a fan of comic books and comic book conventions, Daytona Beach Comic Con needs to be on your list of must attend events. It's a show that actually focuses on comic books. Imagine that! This year's event is happening on Saturday, September the 6th, and Sunday, September the 7th. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. There's a new convention in town, and it's sure to be mega fun without the mega expense. Comics, toys, collectibles, pop culture. ShadowCon, Saturday, February 1st, 2025, in Orlando, Florida. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. If you find yourself in the Orlando area, and let's be honest, doesn't everyone come to Orlando for the House of Mouse? Head over to Coliseum of Comics to get your comic book fix. Be sure to check out their location on East Colonial Drive, where they carry a wide selection of independent comics, including Silverline books. Stop by and don't forget to tell them Silverline sent you. Hey, if you're an independent comic creator looking to get your comic printed, look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our comics and do a fantastic job. They can even print special edition covers. When you reach out to them, be sure to tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Gilbert, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet, and welcome back to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello, everybody.
Ron Fortier.
Howdy.
And David Rios.
Hello.
And tonight we're going to be talking about creating good character moments. I think it's supposed to be great character moments, but I don't know. Maybe I put an encounter wrong. Yes, how do you as a creative team create a moment for your characters to stand out and become memorable, larger than life, a reason for your readers to keep on reading issue after issue? But before we get into all that, a little bit of housekeeping. I have to congratulate Ron on Hamlet's End.
Good job, Ron.
Yes.
Good
And
job.
Zane.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. Last week, end of the campaign. Went to bed Thursday night, still needing about $1,300 to reach the goal and, finish everything up. And obviously, it's like, come on, with the crowded market that Kickstarter is these days, right? Sure enough, wake up Friday morning, I'm sitting there and grab my cell phone, pick it up, just glance at it, and there's Zane going, "Hey, we did it, it's done, blah, blah, blah." In the last 6 hours of the campaign, we got in over $1,300. It's just, Zane and I are getting together in a couple days, and he obviously he ran the campaign, so he has a list of contributors or whatever. But hey, for everybody out there, especially those last minute contributors, thanks so much. I mean, it blows your mind sometimes. Okay, really, really appreciative. It means a lot to both of us. This is a project that was really, really dear to us, and now we're going to get it out there. Want to remind people too at the same time that now that the campaign's successful, it's going to be up for a while where we can still get, contributions, and hopefully that will happen because more contributions obviously lead to other level rewards, but at the same time will help us make it a full color comic, which is something that I am personally pushing for. Zane's work is beautiful in black and white. It's gorgeous, but man, when you see the coloring job he's done on some of the sample pages, this thing just begs for color.
Absolutely. I'm super stoked to see when I get my issue and what all stretch goals we can hit with it. But yeah, I think I'll hold back to Hamlet's end. I found that in indie comics in particular, there is quite a bit of last-minute angel backers in just about any space, which has been sometimes stressful, but it's always interesting to watch how intently you get those last 10 people.
Stressful is an understatement, Tim.
Yeah.
Stressful is a definite understatement. Believe me. All right. Yeah, where the logic is, I have no clue of waiting till the last minute whether they want to see what the overall fan reaction is, and how well we did in those first what was up for months, so in the first 20 some odd days. All right. Yeah. But again, I'm not questioning this at all. All right. It's basically these people were kind, they were generous. And again, we owe them a great deal. So hopefully when the book is out, and I don't have a specific date, but I think Zane's hoping to have it all wrapped up by the end of this month. And hopefully March, April, sometimes in April to ship out copies to all our supporters. So again, really going to be anxious to get that into all our friends' hands. And again, after that, get their feedback and see what they thought.
Absolutely. But yeah, so we will be following that and the developments in the coming weeks, months thereon. No other housekeeping at the moment other than keep an eye out on the Silverline Instagram if you are a Diamond distributor to see our Diamond code for Divinity and all that good stuff. Anyway, tonight's topic, creating great character moments. This is probably something that might be a little writer heavy for Ron and I, but I think when you cut to comics, because it is such a visual medium, some of these great character moments are also just as driven by the visuals, the expressions you can put on the characters, especially now with the amount of detail you get when someone works entirely digital in something, because you have the ability to blow it up and work on a bigger thing before you get down to a panel. You no longer have the days of the classic panel of the straight lines Iron Man pointing to Captain America saying what you need is some solid dick, Cap. Remember that panel? That was that became meme very quickly, but now we have some moments.
The thing with comics is that again, and I think this is the one place where we can talk about this and bring in Dave and Jose. What I have found, obviously, in writing scripts, is to hopefully make them accessible to whatever artist I'm working with the art team, all right, and to have some leeway in allowing them to, contribute, create characters, whatever. But here's the thing: years ago, I wrote a science fiction series, and basically the concept was I had the primary characters defined, all right, aliens that invaded the earth and taken over the earth and whatever, and humankind was fighting back, and you had all these kind of rebel things and groups and whatever. And so my chief main characters were the leader of the rebel group, his girlfriend, and some Dr. Shrink or whatever who was helping out, creating all these scientific weapons to fight the aliens. But at the same time, I wanted a team. So in writing the script, that first issue, I literally put in basically, in describing the setup when the team comes into action, I basically told the artist, he's going to have at least another 5 or 6 guys and gals on the team fighting the aliens with ray guns and shotguns and whatever. So give me some unique figures, some unique characters, create them. Give me something, all right? And so basically, he does just that. I mean, he just uses his imagination. This was Paul Pelletier before he, got discovered and became a pro. And Paul gave me like 5 or 6 unique individualist characters. And watching him just, draw the combat sequence and whatever enabled me to look at these characters and go, okay, this is a cool guy. All right. I mean, what would his name be? All right. And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like re-editing the script and literally Paul's helping me by creating visual characters that I'm now defining and giving personalities to. As it turns out, as we kept doing the series, they became richer to the whole series and added so much weight to it. So it's one thing for you and I, Tim, to write a scene, write characters, and try to develop their personalities and create moments where they stand out. But trust me, in the comic book media, the artist is just as valuable in making that happen.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably something that I know Jose will probably have some opinions on this particular reference, but one of my favorite character moments recently, character interactions, has been in Original Sin, Iron Man versus Hulk. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, essentially it's the origin story of how Tony Stark led to the creation of Bruce Banner being the Hulk through obscuring some information, even though he didn't mean to do it. But it boils down to this huge understanding that leads to them fighting each other, and they destroy Troy and all this other stuff. But there is a moment where you have all this build up into stuff before Stark finally shows like Bruce Banner like what had happened, and you see Hulk turn away and is now like covered in shadow. And remember, like that moment, the visual is the punch of all of that, right? There's so much emotion wrapped in the story of 2 friends who deeply care for each other being driven to fight each other because they feel like they've either have lied to their friend or their friend has lied to them. And so when they finally come to terms and understand the situation, it's the punch of someone feeling like they need to pull back into the shadows, and that being done by the visuals that really makes that sell that character moment. I say that because I know Jose and I have talked about Original Sin before.
Yeah.
In writing characters, I mean, the baseline always should be to make them as believable as you can make them. All right. I mean, as realistic as real people, with real emotions and personalities and whatever. And then you set up the sequence and the scenes and the action, the plot, et cetera, et cetera. But always hanging on to the fact that they're real people and basically letting them at times take you to places where you didn't intend early on in the script, all right, because their personalities get developed to a point where you have to follow along with that lead, because again, it's like basically, if you create a character and you develop them over a period of issues to be one thing, you just can't start a new issue and have them totally do a 180, be something else. So sometimes a writer can box themselves into a corner and say, well, I wanted this to happen, but it's not his personality. It's not her personality. Mm-hmm. So now it's a case of, okay, so free reins. Where's this character going to take me? I still want to do that sequence, but how is it going to play out? Because I want this character to be believable. And that's when you start getting the depth of those characters. That's when they start coming alive to you and being real to you. All right. I mean, past experiences to me, and I was thinking about this week since, I knew what our theme was going to be tonight. And I was thinking back on all the stories I've written, all the comic scripts, and what stood out to me as far as moments where I hope I brought the characterization to another level that the readers appreciated. All right. And there were a couple of them. My comedy superhero, Mr. Jigsaw, Man of a Thousand Parts. All right, here I am. I'm writing stories about this naive, funny guy from Portland, Maine. All right, who, like I said, is just a all-around nice guy and loves being a superhero and has a group of friends that help him out because he is naive and sometimes gets in way over his head, but it's because of his friends that at the end he always triumphs. So 30 years of writing this character, right, and having fun writing him and the world he lives in and his characters, but I start getting this feeling that he's becoming one note, and he's just becoming this really thin little, caricature of a person, unless I start adding some kind of emotions that we haven't touched before. And now that becomes a real ticklish situation because I'm basically writing a comedy. How much do I want to change that? And will it work? And will the readers accept it? And I toyed with that one year. Again, I think along about issue number 7, going into issue number 8, about could I amp the emotion realistically? Could I amp the world around him realistically without losing who he is, but adding a real other layer to his believability? And so ultimately, it was a case of, well, if I don't do this, I'm not being honest with myself, the character, or even my readers. And so I wrote issue number 8, in which he ultimately meets his hero, who's this powerful superhero in this world, at the same time that his hero has discovered that he has cancer. And by the end of the issue, his hero has died.
Yeah.
And literally, the effect of that in the development of Charlie Grant, Mr. Jigsaw, was huge. All right, it's just amazing. Again, like I said, it was walking a tightrope, but people who read the issue were like blown away. They were caught off guard, not realizing that, again, they had a greater sense of him as a real character because of the fact that now he was feeling pain and grief and loss. And it was that element that just now propelled us to keep writing his stories and his adventures and his life. Again, so again, it's like sometimes you fight as a writer to not do something when in fact it's the one thing you should be doing.
Yeah. And you find like all these weird little things, as well as ways that you can explore characters that will surprise you. Like even after you've written it, you then go back and say like, oh, I didn't mean for this to come through. Which is why I think that if you're a writer, I would recommend you pick up if you're newer in this. Well, I mean, any skill level can appreciate from always reading up on new stuff. But there's the Writers for Helping Writers Mood Thesaurus. Then that's like positive traits, negative traits. Get those books because if you're going through and building up a backbone for your character and you have an idea, but you're not quite sure how to flesh it out, it gives you so many ways to branch off and feel like, okay, if this character is honor, what are some similar traits that they'll probably express in different things? Like, how does it express in this other situation? And then what'll be a good antagonistic trait to maybe, like, this is why they're so honorable, is because they have this thing in their past now that causes a bunch of negative traits. And as you create that backbone, that's fine. You can throw your character into any situation, like, okay, I know that they're going to naturally do this thing. And I gave a moment to explore a character, and then you can find those ways to break that mold on moments of character change or character growth where they decide that I'm no longer going to be held back by this thing. I'm going to find a new way to express this thing. What surprised me, talking about a new book, Soul Ascendant, was Rome was notoriously legalistic, right? It's like it's not the most fun part to explore, but the idea that so much of Roman intrigue was about the Senate and the senators backstabbing each other, trying to oust counselors, things like that. And so Soul Ascendant being this Roman-inspired space opera, and Earth being the home of the new empire, they, of course, have another Senate, which is just as legalistic and just as well, you violated this part of this very specific law, therefore we can't let you do anything else, and we need to have a hearing about it. And so my two main characters in the moment, you have this, the head of a research vessel who, of course, she's a researcher. She hates bureaucrats. She's like, I want to go out and discover the truth. I can't be here right now. This is getting in the way of me gathering data. And so I have this moment where I flip the characters where now the supporting character is the impatient one, and the hero, who is a literal demigod, is the one who is like, no, this is good and this is right, because he's a demigod. He's born in the Roman system of gods trying to understand each other's policies. And so we have the demigod of the sun who's sitting there is like, no, this makes sense. I'm here to argue my case. And she's like, why are we here? You're an actual god. You should go out and do god stuff. But have that moment where you can express those characters in a way they didn't necessarily realize that you would be writing, in a space epic, a moment, like a court scene that would allow you to have characters contrast like that.
Oh yeah. Oh, well, definitely. Characters bouncing off each other adds a lot of, dynamic elements to any story. All right. And it helps define them themselves. Mm-hmm. It's that old adage of, what is it? How does it go? Steel sharpens steel.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, if characters are, just always on the same page, always, in sync or whatever, there's a tendency where it starts to get, one note of boring or whatever. But if they're different enough where there's some friction along the line, then it starts to work. Then it starts to help out. We're talking about this and writing characters and having them come to life is like one of the greatest satisfactions as a writer. And a lot of times it'll happen subconsciously. I mean, like you're writing a story and you're writing plots and scenes and whatever, and you get surprised. You constantly get surprised. And when I was writing Terminator, Burning Earth for Now Comics, which was the final series that I wrote for Now, which was illustrated by Alex Ross, right? Prior to writing that, I had developed, again, a team that worked with John Connors. And amongst the team that I created for him, in this rebel squad that was fighting the Terminator robots and Skynet or whatever, right? I had an 18-year-old kid, and so he was like the rookie that all the other guys were looking after, like big brothers, and watching out for him whenever there was a scene of combat or whatever. And that was easy to play off those kind of filial family emotions. So in writing and getting up to Burning Earth, I wrote a sequence where they fall into a trap and the kid gets kidnapped by the robots. Everybody else escapes but the 18-year-old kid. And so now the Terminator, the robots, have him as a prisoner, and they want to know where John Connors' hidden hideout is. So, they're trying to make him talk. He's not going to talk. And ultimately, I'm thinking, well, okay, so these are, soulless, mindless robots. They're going to torture him. And I went, okay, well, they'll cut off a finger and see what that does. And so I write the script. They cut off his finger. I switch to something else. I wrap up the issue. And my wife, Valerie's my first reader. So after I finish it, I take the pages, go over and hand her the script and say, here it is, see what you think of it. Wondering if when she gets to the finger being cut off, she's going to be creeped out and bummed out and whatever. And I'm anxious to get her reaction. Obviously, it's a test for me to see what readers would think. Well, Val sits there and reads the script. About 15 minutes later, she walks back into my office and hands me back the script. And I said, so what'd you think of the torture scene? She goes, doesn't work. And I was like, excuse me? She goes, Ron, she goes, doesn't work. I said, what are you talking about? She goes, he's not talking. I said, right. She says, cut out his tongue. what?
There you go.
What? She goes, Ron, he's not talking. The robots say, okay, you're not going to talk? Well, then you won't talk. Cut out his tongue. And man, I sat back and I went, that's insane. All right, we'll do it. So I rewrite the script where they cut out his tongue. Okay. Then before they do anything else to him in the next issue, Connor shows up, they raid that Terminator base and save him. But now he's silent. Fred, or whatever we called him at that time, he cannot talk. It like changes everything with the character because he's still a part of the team, but now I can't use words. It changes my whole perspective on how I deal with him, and the maturity and the effect of what happened to him, how it changes him going forward and moving forward. And he becomes a 10 times better character, dramatic wise, because of that. Okay. So here's the epilogue to that little vignette, right? Like 7 months later, I'm at the San Diego Comic Con. I'm at the Now comic booths, right? And I'm autographing copies of Green Hornet and Terminator. And my wife's sitting behind me by my right corner behind me in the booth with the people from Now. And these people are coming up and I'm autographing copies of them. And this one kid comes up to me. He had to be maybe 12 or 13, right? And as I'm signing his comic book, he goes, man, when you cut out his tongue, that was so cool. I turn around and look, and my wife is like just sitting there with this Cheshire grin on her face, right? So where do these moments come from? I mean, it's a grab bag, all right. Mm-hmm. But again, like I started, with this discussion, I think it all hinges on how real do you want to make your characters, right? Because I mean, anybody can write any kind of a comic book and just fall back on the traditional tropes. Mm-hmm. You can have the hero who's stalwart, good guy, never makes a mistake, right? Or the dastardly villain, or this or that, or the love interest, or whatever. And those are all familiar tropes, but at the same time, they're all safety nets, right? That don't challenge you as a creator. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, literally, all you're going to be doing is regurgitating the same pablum, right? Story after story, issue after issue, issue after issue. All right. And so the real challenge is to make your characters fit those molds. Don't get me wrong. You still need heroes. You still need villains. But how do you make them stand out? And how do you make them so real that your readers feel for them? All right, and get upset when you do things to them. Another little vignette that you'll appreciate a great deal. Another little incident coming out of a convention one time where one of the guests was Marv Wolfman, along about the same time that he and George Perez were doing Teen Titans for DC, which arguably in those years was like one of their best-selling series ever. It was a great comic series. So my wife and I are out to dinner that night at the con at this hotel restaurant near the convention hall, and we come out, and who happens to be walking in front of us but Marv and a friend of his. And it's a nice summer night, and we're walking like maybe 10 feet behind them, and not eavesdropping, and I can hear their conversation to the point where at one point Marv's friend says to him, man, he says, I can't believe the following Teen Titans has. He goes, boy, you're really, really giving the fans what they want, right? And Marv starts to laugh and goes, oh no. He goes, we give them exactly what they don't want.
Yeah.
Right.
And it stopped me dead in my tracks. And then I got the reverse psychology. He goes, oh no. He says, once we start seeing they have a favorite character, he says, we dump so much shit on that character, and then they get all upset with us, and we get all this mail and this and that. Yeah. So sometimes it's like, hey, give them exactly what they don't want.
Right. No, absolutely. I think Kind of going back to your point about how real do you want your characters to be? I think and making your characters full outside of the normal tropes. I think that's why in Wolf Hunter, why I made, and there's a couple reasons why I made Willard both physically and sort of like physically disabled as well as having severe PTSD is because those are traits that they do exist in a certain extent, but you don't necessarily see them in different lights. It's like, obviously, the Punisher has severe PTSD. However, it's not a relatable experience for most people with PTSD to then go out and start hunting on the mafia. But I wanted to make him a character that there's so much in World 2 about people who still did amazing feats, even after losing a limb or going to hell and back. And one of the parts that I wanted to have him, if you take a round from a Mr. Schmidt's auto cannons while in a dogfight, if it hits you in the knee, your knee's exploded and you're losing that leg. And so that's just a realistic thing to happen. But also that is a result of so many things that happened in that dogfight. So now he's a character who has lost his leg and has to rely on a prosthetic at the time, which are not great. And how many characters are there for vets to have prosthetic legs to look at and look when they see that character, say, like, I know that experience is like, or I can see myself in that character. So I wanted to make someone who kind of hits that point of being someone that, if you've gone through an experience like that, you can finally see yourself in a hero who is actually doing heroic things. But then his PTSD, it doesn't necessarily mean that he questions his own judgment, because he's always of the thought that, like, I made the right call, I saved my guys, that's what I'm supposed to do, that's my job. But he now questions his physical ability because he's always like, could I have been faster? Could I have juked after I had done this maneuver? Could I have done something? So that's where the question comes. It's this moment of internalized PTSD, where it's completely driven at his own core. Which is, I had a friend when I was first writing the treaty for this, who is a Marine Raider, and that was kind of his experience with it. Is that he had made a judgment call while out on the field, got his guys out, but people got injured, and his own thought was, okay, I made the right decision, but could I have been faster myself? Could I have done something? Why wasn't I able to stop the fighting and get everyone out at the same time? So it's that kind of experience I wanted to have reflected in a character, which I don't think you would find in other necessarily like war hero characters, like war story characters that are actively still fighting that war. And I want to have that moment of, you can have all these things and you can have these experiences, but still be in a position where people trust you because your intellect is good, because you do have good decision making, and you can still go out and make a difference. And it led to having some fun moments with Martin Bertone, and which will transition into the coloring and the illustration part of character moments, where there are moments where I feel like we could have just used the illustration and the colors to do all the storytelling. I don't think I would need to write captions, because there's a moment in the first issue where it goes from the end of the dogfight, the plane crashes, there's a big boom, lots of yellows and reds. Cut to Willard's face, fade to black. Come back to Willard now laying on a surface he can't make out detail, but it's a punch of red. Then it fades to orange, and then it fades to him in the shadows in the hospital. And without me putting any words in there, you can already see like his emotional arc and those 5-6 panels as a character.
Right.
And then when he
less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more. Always. Yeah. It's such a delicate balance doing comics, all right, because it's a visual media. It is what it is. It is a visual media. And, between David and Jose, that's their background. That's where they're at in storytelling. With writers, we live by our words, okay? Yep. And to train yourself, okay, to understand the media is so crucial to writing it. Because, again, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I applaud you for it wholeheartedly, all right? It's rare that I'll write a script and then when I'm done, after the first draft, is not go back over it and do my best to cut out as much wordage as I can. There is nothing I despise more than a comic book that is overfilled with like a bazillion word balloons and captions and whatever, and the actual art is like postage stamp in each little panel. You know, I mean, I want to take those writers and take them out to the back shed with a, with a paddle, and come on, all right. Look, if you love your words so much, then write a novel. Okay, go write a novel. But if you're writing comics, then write the scene, then let the artist tell the story. Yeah. And if you need a caption, fine. But use economy, just the words you need and nothing else. And if there's drama and there's a way you can impact an entire scene without a single dialogue, do it. All right, and you pulled it off, and like I said, bravo to you. I've done that myself in certain places where you're writing the script and you start writing, caption this or that, and then you take a step back and you go, no, let it go. Let him or her draw this out. Let them draw this out, and the impact is 100 times better. All right, absolutely. And that's a good comic. That's what a comic is supposed to be. It's supposed to be this marriage between visuals and story and literature that work so seamlessly together. All right. That, again, like I tell people all the time, the last thing you want from a fan or reader after finishing a comic book is for them to sit back and applaud only one element of it. If they applaud the comic book, then everybody on the team has done their job. It's one story, all right, that you want applause for. You, the artist, the letterer, the colorist, working as a team. And honestly, that's not an easy thing to do. It's a talent, all right? It really is a gift. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with different artists from different venues. There was a gentleman from Florida who taught art in a college, right? And he was a painter and gifted artist. He could probably draw anything, could paint like there was no tomorrow, whatever. And when we ran into each other at Dragon Con in Atlanta, he was like, "Oh, I've always wanted to do comics. I've always wanted to do comics." So before we left, we exchanged information. I told him, well, I'd send him an 8-page script, a little horror thing, right? And then, if he drew it and, it came out all right, we'd find somebody and publish it in an anthology. So I go home, I write the script, I send it to him, and a month goes by and I don't hear from him. Almost another 2 months go by and I email him and he's like, "I can't do this." And I went, "Excuse me?" He goes, "I'm drawing the panels the way you have them described." But he said, "It's not working." He said, "I'm not seeing the movement. I'm not seeing," he could not wrap his visual eye around how to draw those pictures and how to make the composition work in the page. And then he went, "Damn, this is harder than I ever thought it could be." There you go. Yeah.
I mean, doing narrative art.
How to draw, right? Don't say it's not just how to draw. You have to understand the process.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hello to the chatters. You are about halfway through the night show. We're talking about making character moments, and we're transitioning now into some of the art period of things. But yeah, Jose, you're talking about when you're crafting these great character moments. It's not just how to draw; it's what to draw, the framing of it, the angle. I mean, even sometimes the way you work lines around a character's face to work expressions or to work the perceived space they take up.
Right. Well, for moments, you know what I mean? Yeah. There's the build up, right? You have to build up to that moment. I mean, and ideally that's what the writer does. But even like I've had moments like that in doing pencils for obsoletes where Wes, kind of built it up, and then like as I looked at it, like if you consider each frame like animation stills, right? The more frame you have, the more panels you have, the slower an action goes. You know what I mean? If you take that into consideration like that, there's a couple spots where I got rid of some of the panels. I was like, listen, I'm just going to make it one big panel and then show the motion in that panel itself. And I sent it off to Wes like, hey, what do you think? Like before I finish pencils on this, right? Before I can clean pencils and whatnot, what do you think? He's like, oh, I love it. Just keep going with it. I'm like, all right, awesome. And but that build up, like like I said, creating good character moments, you want that build up. And so yeah, like what you're saying, Ron, about the guy, saying he not being able to do it. Doing narrative art, it's not easy. You know what I mean? It's for some people it might come easy. I mean, I think Pete, it just comes like naturally for him, but I kind of have to work at it. I mean, I digitally lay my roughs out and everything, but I wouldn't have known how to do it had I not gone to school for it. Had I not had professional people telling me like this is the process to get to that point. So it's not easy, but it's not doable, right? I mean, I just wanted to like cover that spot. But like character moments, I like the build up. I like, what I mean, getting to that point. If I know that at this end it's going to be, a massive fight or a massive just build of power and whatnot, I want to see that build up in the panels when I do it. I want to show like the angle that leads to it. You know what I mean? Artistically, and then for me, it's bold lines. Like the more bold lines I have in it, for that moment, to me, the more intense it seems. You know what I mean? The more intensity that I feel is added to it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's even before adding, any gray tones or inks and whatnot or any color. I would want that boldness to bring the what you're trying to convey, for that moment, for that character forward.
Definitely.
And then,
Well, I mean, one of the things, again, and I could talk, comics the rest of my life and never get tired of it because I love the media so much, guys. The truth is, that synergy between the writer and the artist, right? Sometimes an artist will come to a writer with an idea, and they're seeing it visually. So one of the projects I'm currently working on right now is a modern day spy thriller called Gin and Tonic. All right, and this was brought to me by an artist now living in Florida named Cesar Feliciano. And when Cesar brought me the concept, basically got a hold of me and said, Ron, I've got this idea, but he said, I'm not a writer. And so he lays out the basic plot. The basic plot is two people, a Chinese boy and a Russian girl, are brought up as children by two evil organizations, right? It's the KGB in Russia, and in China, it's a martial arts Black Dragon Society. And both of them are brought up to be cold-blooded assassins. And then ultimately, their paths will cross, and things happen when they find out who they really are, and there's this switch, there's this epiphany, and then we launch into the second half of the story the way he wanted it to be, okay? They change their lives, in other words, and stop working for these bad organizations, all right? That's the basic plot. That's what he had, all right? So I like the idea, but I mean, it's a skeletal thing. It's basically a framework. There's just not a whole lot of meat to it. So I wrote up a longer proposal. I fleshed it out a lot more between who both these characters were, with some hint of their backgrounds, et cetera, and ended up with like 5 or 6 pages worth of, background material, laying out the concept. Sent it back to Cesar, and he absolutely loved it and said, you've got a handle on it. Please go ahead, start writing. Okay. So I start writing the first script, and as I'm writing the script, again, I have to come up with a backstory for them as children, figure out where they're at in the world today, and every now and then keep doing flashbacks to show their maturity as they're being manipulated and shaped by these two organizations to become killers, cold-blooded killers. And what happens with this is it demanded so much of me that I fell in love with the characters a great deal. Okay, I began to empathize with them. All right, because I began to understand where Cesar's whole idea had come from in the first place, and realized that we were doing a story of basically lost souls who get redeemed, and everything turns around. But how do I make that real? How do I make the motivations real, et cetera, et cetera? So I finished the first script, I get it off to him, and he's tickled pink with it. And he goes off and draws the thing to the point where it blew me away. The book is phenomenal. That first issue is great. In the meantime, I'm writing the second issue, and again, I'm delving into their backgrounds. Again, I'm jumping back and forth from the present and the past to the point where with the Russian girl Daya, I end up writing a sequence with her where she's being brought up by this woman who's really not her mother, and it's like the evil stepmother kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I end the second issue with she's basically abusing this like 10-year-old little girl, and it ends with her basically being forced outside because she dirtied her school uniform, and her mother wants her to stand outside until she tells her she can come back in the house. And this is a village in Siberia. It's below zero freezing, and Daya's standing there in a ripped little uniform, crying, the tears almost freezing on her cheek. And that's how issue 2 ends, all right? I mean, I have now invested so much of myself because of what Cesar had this wonky idea that was going to be an action thing, all right? But it's just become so much more for me. Well, again, like I said, he's so busy finishing up drawing issue number 1, he never looked at number 2, the script. Now, months after one's published and out, he decides one afternoon, okay, well, I think I'll start doing preliminary works on issue number 2 that Ron wrote. Has been sitting there in his files that long. And I caught him totally off guard. All right? Because all of a sudden, I wake up in the morning and I've got this email from Cesar, and he's like, oh my God, I love this story. I love these characters, Ron. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She is amazing. She is great. We got to do blah, 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 blah. And I sat back and I just like went, job accomplished. This is what had to happen. All right. I mean, literally, if I can make that work for him, all right, then again, like I said, his artwork is inspiring me all the way. And so we're just two different creators locked onto a story now where the characters are becoming so rich to us that it's impossible for me to just take this on. You know, I'm now 30 pages into script number 3, and it's like I do this with so much passion because the stories just basically overwhelm my life. I just want to tell this story in the worst way possible and make it something really special for Cesar and for everybody else who comes on board after these things get published. That's the magic of comics.
Right.
Absolutely. Very cool.
Magic of comics.
Well, I kind of mentioned a little bit about what Martin Tonden did with colors in Wolf Hunter, but David, I want to grab your thoughts on this while we're talking about making character moments that stand out. Obviously, like different, stories will call for different palettes or different ways of handling the coloring. But when you're having these moments where it is just focused on characters and maybe there is a moment of change or a moment of discovery or a moment of character-to-character connection that'll help make that character stand out to the reader, what might be some considerations you'd make when coloring?
Well, it all depends on the panel. I mean, a lot of it, I just kind of go into it and I kind of step back and take a look and decide which direction to go and read the panel. And, if it's, kind of like I've talked before, where, you play around with a lot of bold colors, a lot of, reactionary things to what's going on in the panel. So, if it's an aha moment, you want to have splashes of something a little more intense. It's just more subtle, then, more muted colors, maybe darker and things like that, just kind of working up to it. You can go ahead and through the progression, if it's not a immediate, a quick change type thing, you can do stuff like, gradually going from more muted darker and, boost colors, boost colors, boost colors, boost colors, to come into where you want. Playing around with lighting, directions, things like that are also something that you can pick up. You can throw in things like more background details and things. It all depends on what you're reading into the panel and what you can see and balance that with the rest of the page and the pages around it. So it's just as a penciler or an inker will embellish their details and their information into the page and their layout on the page. It's the same thing in color. It's how are you going to go through and support what's going on, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to ever contradict with anything that has been put down, particularly by the pencil or inker. I mean, one of the worst things you can do is try to fight a panel that was designed. Let's go through, and you have a pencil or an inker that really want to go through and darken a page and set a mood, and the last thing you want to do is come and contrast that to try and throw in splashes of brightness and stuff like that to change the mood of the page and all that. So it's very much a reading into it, and from the stuff that I did in my inking stuff before I started doing the coloring is I was listening to Ron and what he was talking about, and some of the things I remember when I was doing the inking stuff was the emotions and the things that you got into if you got vested into a page, and it does extend to color and all that, but if you really got invested in it, you were always trying to do that that contribution to it, and you got the excitement of hey, what if we did this, what if we did that, from the inking aspect of it is like, do we want something that's maybe a little more thinner lines with more detail, or do we want to take this and concentrate more on like solid splotches of solid black and all that, set the mood. But it involves a lot of working with, when I was doing it with a penciler that I was dealing with. But that was also, we were doing a lot of smaller own stuff. So, we didn't have, we were doing like, short page runs, 4 pages, whatever. So we were doing a lot of the storyline and all that stuff with that. So, there was that energy and, going in and going, hey, this is the excitement on that. So I could see and follow a lot of the stuff, Ron was talking about, that feed that you're dealing with the other creators on that can really drive your creativity and what you put into it and the feeling that you put into it. Because otherwise, it is if you're not vested in it, then you're pretty much just there doing an 8 to 5 job to throw things down and just meet the minimum requirements or whatever. You're not really going through investing in it. So
Absolutely.
Yep. I mean, hey, like I said, if you're in love with your words and you want to, be a writer, and flowery words and poetry and whatever, then write a novel. Okay. And that has its own rewards. Now, I've written a few, and I've written tons of short stories, and that's fun. But it doesn't have that synergy of working with other creators and working with a team. You are by yourself, all right? And it's an arduous process sometimes to write, a 60,000, 80,000 word novel.
Yeah.
Because again, there's nobody lifting your weight. It's all on you, okay? And so my hat off to people who write novels. I mean, bravo, good for you, okay? And like I said, there's some damn good writers out there. But I mean, hey, I got this bug when I was a kid as far as comics. I learned to read from comics. I learned to appreciate storytelling from comics, and was blessed enough to end up living a life doing this, and it's been a joy. All right. I mean, the day it isn't fun, that's the day I'll stop. But
Yeah.
right now, it's as much fun as the first stories I ever had published 50 years ago.
That's cool.
yeah, we realize, we talk about this many times, that this is not the industry to get rich in. we all know this. So you need to be invested on what you put into it and have fun doing it.
Yes.
Because the last thing you want to do is be that person that is just in it for a paycheck, because it's not gonna
It's not gonna.
Wrong. Paychecks are nice.
Well,
Paychecks are indeed lovely, but
Hey, you can throw all the money you want at me, but
yeah.
nah, it's not. It's not why you do it. It's not why.
Yes. I will say though, you need to have a passion for it, and I keep forgetting who said it. Might have been Steve Vai, who said that if you want to be successful in any creative industry, and this is kind of what we talk about here, is that we do this because we're passionate about it, and because we're telling stories because we want to have fun with it. And like Steve Vai said, is be successful in anything is you need to be passionate enough to achieve escape velocity.
Well said.
Yeah, because everyone.
It actually makes real sense.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I got to show you this because we were talking about it, and I can't pass up the idea of promoting this anyways.
Sure.
But check it out.
Wait, glasses.
Oh my gosh! There you go.
Issue number 1.
Nice.
Gin and tonic.
That's great.
That's cool.
Ah, yeah, that's my baby. Amongst 9 other projects.
I would tell you that one of the first things Roland told me when coming in and literally just coming into ink obsoletes was that you're not going to get very far if you don't have a passion for it. Like, we're doing this because you have a passion for it, not because we're trying to make a ton of money off it. And it's like, as long as you're okay with that, I was like, dude, I went to art school for it. Like, I had already made the decision that this is what I want to do, regardless. You know what I mean? And that is obviously a conversation I had to have with my wife to make sure that we were going to be on the same page about it. Because if you're not, then things kind of go haywire and things don't go the way you like. And so, like I said, talk to my wife, and she's like, "Is this what you want to do? Like, you went to school for this. Like, if you went to school for this, this is what you need to do." I'm like, all right, as long as we're on the same page. And so that's what I do. You know what I mean? I sit down and I've had not that I've not obviously been in the business very long, but I've done, well, I think 6 or 7 covers for Silverline. You know what I mean? I've inked some stuff before, but I've inked 2 books, um, 3 issues of one. I'm working on the pencils for the rest of the 3rd issue, and inks for another one, and just like I said, going to conventions, talking to Roland, talking to Tommy, talking to everybody. Trying to get Tim to body slam people through a table.
Yes.
Just all that really has helped me to grow as a creator. It helped me to grow as a comic book artist. And the hardest thing that school told me was our first day. They said, starting today, you can now call yourself a comic book artist. And I'm like, but can I? Like, I don't know if I can. Like, it just doesn't feel right saying it, right? But once I started like actually working, getting books, like having books to put on the table, I'm like, that's like so much, like just such a sense of pride to be able to say, I've worked on these. Like, look, Mom, look, like I didn't waste all that time drawing on the wall with crayons. I promise you.
Absolutely. I will say I'm going to be at SoccerCon April 18th through that weekend. So if you're in the Seattle area and you have a copy of Wolf Hunter or any Silverline comic, come to me, and I'm going to be cosplaying as Guillaume Himejima from Demon Slayer. So if you're getting body slammed in a photo by Guillaume, bring it up a Silverline comic, I'll sign it and I'll body slam it. Saturday, I'll be Guillaume in a maid outfit. So if you want a really funny one, that'll be a good day to do it.
Nice.
I was hoping, was it the last convention? I think the cosplay of the anime convention you went to, Tim. You sent us pictures. I was just afraid as I was flipping through the pictures to see you like just hoisting someone up in the air. I was like, "Hey, come on, please." Oh,
I have to send you a TikTok video, but I had a video actually of a person cosplaying as Noir Spider-Man while he's cosplaying as Bachira from Blue Lock, and they were they're putting me in different strangleholds as I was trying to run away from them.
That's awesome.
Anyway. This has been That's a One Show on Tuesday. This has been talking about creating character moments. We'll be back next week talking about something we alluded to a little bit today, which is how to know when to create a silent panel and how to go about doing that. And for those who don't know, silent panel, of course, is one with no dialogue, no caption. You're just letting the art breathe. So as a writer, we'll be talking about pacing, and as the more illustrated minded of the show, they'll be talking about the actual technique that goes into making those panels pop and perhaps hit a little harder than the rest of the page around them. So,
all right.
We'll be about next week. Make sure to check out Wednesday WM and Silver Sunday on those respective days. And until that time,
I did it.
Make mine Silverline.
Make mine Silverline.